one of the pastors said, if Jesus will be on the earth today, he will be armed for protect himself. So there are these kind of things. Religion is being instrumentalized. There is the politicization of religion, but also the religionization of politics happening in many, many countries. Europe as well.
This is a podcast called Walk, Talk, Listen. An attempt to connect people and make this world a bit better by sharing opinions and experiences based on the belief that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. My name is Maurice Blom, and I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen.
Okay, good day, everybody. This is another episode of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. And as always, I'm delighted with today's guest who will introduce himself. Rudelmar, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. My name is Rudelmar Bueno de Faria. I'm the General Secretary of the ACT Alliance. That's the global coalition of churches and church-related organizations working globally on humanitarian development and advocacy work. It's a pleasure to be seeing this podcast.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And I'm really, I feel a little bit guilty because you're still in the middle of a jet lag. You just came back, right, from a long travel. So my apologies there and many things. You are based in Geneva, right? And that's where you're sitting at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but where were you born and raised?
Yeah, I was born in Brazil, in the south of Brazil. I grew up there, basically, spending half of my life working in Brazil, constructing my life, family. And then after, when I was 32 years old, I left Brazil to work in Central America, in several countries, in El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and also in Colombia, in South America. And living from a different context in which I have been spending most of my time, to a different context of where conflicts, wars were still happening in the region, and I was somehow involved in this peace building and negotiations for peace by the organization that I worked when I was there.
Okay.
And then I came to Geneva. Where I spent the last 30 years.
Can I take you back to Brazil? So how was your, did you have a difficult youth, or were you always, outside and you did not have to worry? Tell a bit. And did you have siblings? How was that?
Yes, I have two brothers. One passed away, the youngest one.
No, so sorry.
And also a sister. We are three now. They are living in different states in Brazil. One is living in the Amazon forest, and the other one working in the southeast of Brazil, basically as a air controller trafficker. Basically, my adolescence was not so complicated as most of my Brazilian friends, fellows have past difficulties. I was raised in a stable home, and I was able to get my studies, although it was not very easy. At that time, a long time ago, it was not so easy to get access to studies in Brazil, especially at university level. I had basically not faced the same problems that most of the people, especially the marginalized ones, face in Brazil. So I can't consider myself a very lucky person, able to build my family. I have two daughters, one living here in Switzerland, the other one decided to go back to Brazil, and also three grandsons now.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool. That's congratulations. So when you decided when you were 22 years old to leave Brazil, what were the reasons for doing that?
Well, I have been involved, I have been studying, and my education was in international relations, but also foreign trade. And I have been working with the private sector in a big company producing audiovisual equipment like overhead projectors, cine projectors, and slide projectors at that time. And then I felt not very much associated with the values that that specific company was providing, especially how they were treating people, especially workers. So I decided to move on and to engage with civil society organizations. And I had the opportunity to work with a faith-based organization, a church actually, being the head of the development office of the Lutheran Church in Brazil. And that, of course, opened my eyes, my new perception in terms of values and life. And of course, then when you enter in this kind of international cooperation, there is always doors that are being opened. And because I was connected with many different organizations providing support to the civil society in Brazil, I got the opportunity to work in one of them, living in Brazil for that reason. That was basically the opportunity to expand my experiences, my expertise as well, improve, work in different contexts.
Okay. And so when you are mentioning that that's when you also came across faith-based organization, does that mean that faith was not that important when you grew up in Brazil, or how was that? Did you go to?
Brazil is a very religious country. It was predominantly Catholic in the past. Nowadays, it's not the situation anymore because of the growing more evangelical and Pentecostal churches in there. I was in the beginning, when I was a youth, very much involved in the youth group of the Catholic Church. But very soon I realized that there were things that were not working properly, especially in terms of some dogmas of the church that were excluding people, not liberating them. So for a time, I went out from the church, and I didn't want to be very much connected with the church. And then when I met my wife, that came from a Protestant tradition, Lutheran, she was very much engaged on that. So she was little by little convincing me that it will be important to be part of this community because of the values that I didn't find in the private sector. And she said, you need to find some work or institutions where you can find to match the values that you have and promote and work together. So that's why I joined the Lutheran Church.
Yeah. And what did your family think about that?
Well, it was interesting because my wife and father, that were Catholic at the time, they like it, and even they became Lutherans because they started to frequent the church, and luckily in the congregation that they were attending, it was very progressive in terms of values, inclusion of people, different, especially in the South, where some kind of racism and discrimination was part of the culture there. So they found very interesting to be joining this congregation, and happy with me as well for being connecting with faith again.
Okay. So you were explaining that, then when you were 22 years old, you go...
It was 32 years.
Oh, actually. 32. Sorry,
Yeah,
I thought 20. So when you were 32 years old, you go around in the region, and you mentioned that you got involved in peace building. Can you maybe come up with one example of, the work that you did or the process that you were part of?
Yeah. I was working for an international organization there, was faith-based as well, that was responsible for big programs in terms of bring CERT, former fighters from the army and from the guerrilla, into society again, to try to rebuild civil society, and also support initiative for democratization of the country after the the peace agreements in El Salvador. And immediately there was the organization that I was working with. The head of this organization was at the same time the person, it was a Norwegian person, nominated for facilitating the dialogue between the army, the guerrilla, and also the government in Guatemala. So I have been representing my organization in these talks, focusing, of course, in the peace process, in the inclusion of the indigenous communities' values in the new educational constitution or policy that was created after the peace agreements. And more recently, and still somehow engaged in Colombia, with the ELN negotiations for the peace agreements in Colombia.
So do you speak Spanish?
Yes, that is my second language, basically.
Okay. Okay, so that was something you needed in
exactly
in within the region. Okay, so you and I, we know each other from New York. So can you tell then, how did you end up in New York? Coming from working in Latin America, how did that happen?
Well, before going to New York, I have spent about 10 years based in Geneva, but working in visiting more than 100 countries, where my organization was working, especially focusing on refugees, IDPs, and displaced people, and even stateless people. And then I spent about...
Rudelmar, sorry, just for our listeners who are not familiar. So IDP stands for...
internally displaced
people. Yeah. Now we from the NGO world, we often come up with all these abbreviations. I want to
the audience to be one of the
clear.
things that we need to change. And basically then after 18 years working with this organization, of course, I felt that I need to have a different engagement. And there was the opportunity to work in New York, representing the World Council of Churches to the UN. And that is a position that I held for 4 years before coming back to Geneva to take my current position as General Secretary of the ACT Alliance. That stood for Action by Churches Together.
Yeah. And so how was your work that you had to do for the World Council of Churches in New York, working with the UN, right, especially, and its partners and that community? How was it different than the role that you're playing now for ACT Alliance?
Well, in the ACT Alliance, I still am playing this role somehow at the UN, because one of the roles of my position is representation and also advocacy, global advocacy. So it's still similar as the World Council of Churches, the position I have now. But of course, representing a coalition of implementing members that are engaged in more than 125 countries, and they are implementing humanitarian development and advocacy work. Our membership is comprised of national, international, regional members and global members as well. So it's a little bit different from WCC. But the focus in New York was basically on the peace, education, human rights, and also sustainable development. And that has been one of the areas that I have been focused the most, was the issue of peace, being part of also of the UN NGO working group on the Security Council, and also engaging with different UN agencies for implementation of programs together, and also advocacy initiatives in different parts of, in all the regions of the world, actually.
Rudelmar, for those listeners who are not familiar with the ACT Alliance, what would be your elevator pitch? I mean, I've heard that you're representing many implementing organizations, faith-based organizations all around the world, but what is it that what is actually your main mission and vision, and what do you hope to achieve? When do you know that you have done your work well? So.
when we have saved lives, when we have supported communities to be more resilient to the effect of climate change, on the impact of economic um, challenges, and when people feel empowered in terms of taking leadership and also agency in the work that they do. Basically, our work is structured to provide humanitarian assistance. That has been one of the strong part of the work of the Alliance since 1995. And but very much today connected with advocacy work as well, because the changes needs to be done at the global, regional, and national levels, and on policy, and also changing social and cultural norms that are undermining sustainable development, gender equality, and attracting completely the life of the planet. And that is the work that we do. And the ACT Alliance, of course, is it's a faith-based organization, not necessarily churches, all of them, but some of them, departments of churches or NGOs that were created by the churches even in 1947 after the Second World War in Europe, and they have been engaged and they are operating globally. So that's a little bit the ACT Alliance. 152 members in more than 125 countries. At the national level, we have national forums that brings together all the members, but also a permanent invitation for National Council of Churches and other interreligious organizations to join and to work together, implement together, and to avoid duplication of work. And work to address issues. ACT Alliance is one of the most recognized faith-based organizations working on gender justice, including these sensitive issues that sometimes for some faith-based organizations is difficult to address, like sexual reproductive health and rights, or the protection of LGBTQI plus communities. So that is part of our work as ACT Alliance.
Thanks for that, Rudelmar. So, if there are faith-based organizations out there and they are not part of ACT Alliance, why would they sign up? And what does it mean to sign up to be part of the community? I mean, in terms of expectations, right? That is there a subscription fee, or no? They just have to work according to a certain, a charter or rules that you developed. Why should an organization be joining ACT Alliance?
Yeah, we have many organizations, faith-based, that would like to be part of the ACT Alliance, including non-Christian organizations from other faiths. But unfortunately, we have a membership criteria that's basically the organizations interested in becoming member of the ACT Alliance needs to be associated with the World Council of Churches or the Lutheran World Federation in some way, having someone representing on the board or things similar like that. And so that makes it a little bit difficult for some organizations to join as members. But those who can, including National Council of Churches that have a proven track record in humanitarian development and advocacy, they can, if they will adopt the code of conduct, the code of good practice, and all the international standards that the ACT Alliance has for membership, then they can become a member of the ACT Alliance. And of course, each one of them paid a membership fee that varies according to the income of the organizations. There is a sharing solidarity or fee that the people provide support for everyone. And that's to support the coordinating office of the ACT Alliance that is distributed in 8 countries, including a position in New York to the UN. And the members then, but there is a possibility for members that are not meeting the criteria for membership to engage at the national level with the national forums. That there is these options, and that means working together, implementing projects together, and also sharing capacities between the different interreligious or ecumenical organizations.
Okay. Yeah, Rudelmar, a lot has happened since the beginning of this year. I mean, I think, for instance, due to a changed approach within the U.S. By the U.S. government, the present U.S. government, because they've have stopped many of the aid going on, USAID, etc. So, yeah, what do you see happening as a result of that? But more, it's not only in the US; it's in other countries as well. As a result of wars that going on, so then they say less money should be given to humanitarian assistance, etc., and those type of activities. So, yeah, what do you see happening in the sector, and what does that mean for ACT Alliance and its members?
Yeah, Maurice, what happened in this year, in the beginning of the year, with the U.S. Announcement, it's not new. That has been happening already since many years ago, little by little, not in this scale, and also opening how it was announced by the U.S. government. But many governments have started to shift their support for international cooperation, humanitarian cooperation, the ODA, that's the development aid given to countries. That has been started. They are shifting that to security. They are shifting that for creating more protection mechanism for avoiding migrants to come to Europe or to other places and so on. But the decision of the U.S. has exacerbated that at a point that brings us to an alarming situation. Not only because the U.S. was responsible basically for 40% of the contribution for the humanitarian sector globally, but is the attitude that concerns me the most. Because that has a big impact on how we understand we as humanity, how we address issues that have been part of our values as society, even not only faith-based religious organizations, but also civil society, like solidarity, inclusion, respect, even compassion, because we see situations today that is completely a lack of compassion for the life of the people. And for me, it's complicated because that is generating a narrative and making that natural. And many other governments have immediately followed that. And by experiences facing the situation in my own country, in Brazil, when we had the governments that have been using this kind of practices, what we have built as society over the 500 years that Brazil exists, 1 year is enough to destroy all of that. And to recover from this, it's double work. It's not the same. It's very easy to destroy, to reframe values or to deny values, than to build them again. Because there is this regressive agenda on human rights and human dignity that it's associated with decisions like the US, the European countries have made as well.
So, yeah, what do you have to do then as ACT Alliance? What are you doing?
Yeah, we have two fronts basically, because we are delivering, we are saving lives, we are providing support for community resilience, for food security, for all kinds of health, everything that is associated with the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals. And now we are in a point that we need to decide who we are going to save. It's the groups more marginalized, and we need, because the funding it's affecting not only the ACT Alliance, but everybody, governments as well. They are the most affected actually by the cuts from the US, and that is creating a catastrophic situation in some regions. So we need to decide what is we have reprioritized. We have looked for alternative ways of getting funds in a solidarity way from the membership of the ACT Alliance, but looking partnership with like-minded organizations from foundation, from government, from other governments that are interested in supporting principles and values that are inclusive and promote saving lives as well for the humanitarian. The second point is to address issues on the moral imperative of these decisions, and to act in advocacy with very concrete strategies, but working together, not isolated at ACT Alliance, but joining hands with multilateral system, with other interfaith networks, with the societies in general and governments to break this cycle, and also to try to stop this this trend that is happening of political polarization, misuse of religion, the fundamentalism or the confluence of fundamentalism, the religious, economic, and political, that is affecting decision making. And people that has the money, that is the big autocrats and of the world that are defining, and that we need to explore more, to take more from the planet, because we need much more profit than before. So, and associated with that as well, how that will be in the context of artificial intelligence as well, because that has a big impact on narratives, and also in post-truth, and changing the completely the understanding of people of the values. For instance, in Brazil, we have some of the neo-Pentecostal churches. They are even trying to change the theology or the interpretation of the Bible to include issues like someone I heard now, I was just on holidays in Brazil. One of the pastors said, if Jesus will be on the earth today, he will be armed for protect himself. So there are these kind of things. Religion is being instrumentalized. There is the politicization of religion, but also the religionization of politics happening in many, many countries, Europe as well. And we will see that in other regions as well, Latin America and US as well.
I would like to continue piggybacking on some of the things you said, but first remind the listeners that, you know, what I hope to achieve with this particular podcast is connecting people, because I think that's really the first step in, you know, trying to explore if you can maybe talk with each other, listen to each other, and then dialogue, which is really important in this polarizing, more polarized world. I'm trying to connect you with 3 guests from the previous podcast, and all of them have a question for you. And the first question for you is,
how could the next guest relate what is happening in a global politics today compared to what has been achieved in the last 30 years? What do they see? What is their fear? What are their worries? What could they do to make the difference?
That's maybe, you know, following of what you already said,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, you know, we cannot deny that we have progressed as humanity from previous years. If you see the indicators in terms of poverty, how we have advanced in the last years, in terms of the technology that is useful for many sectors, we have advanced communication and all the you know, technology. I recall the time that I saw a computer uploading a browser for the first time, you know, how, and the creation of the Wi-Fi. You know, I have passed all these things, and sometimes we don't realize that in a short period of time, we have progressed so much, but also in terms of awareness. But what's keeping me awake in the night is the polarization, the political polarization that still threatens peace, threatens the even intelligence of people, not the artificial intelligence, but the human intelligence in terms of how people is changing that. So I see progress in the health sector as well. Medicines, we see how that has advanced, but now in the last years, I'm seeing a setback, a pushback that will be very difficult to get back to the levels that we had 10 years ago, I would say.
Okay. Then the second question of the previous guest is,
what gives you hope? What gives you hope? I'm from a faith perspective, hope for me is something that keeps me moving. It gives us an horizon that gives me the motivation to continue to walk. So what gives you hope in your life, in your work, in your journey towards justice?
Yeah, what gives me hope is that there are groups that are sharing these concerns, that are acting in different ways to revert what is going on today. That's giving me hopes. And among these groups is the youth, because we see sometimes they are not so outspoken, but they are quite heroes that are keeping programs and people going. And I think that is the something that gives me hope. What is not, I hope to have more hope in the moment that, for instance, the religious community will stand up and speak out more cooperatively together. Because we don't see today. We are facing a crisis of values in the world today, but we do not. You are not hearing the outcry from the churches, from the mosque, from from all the religious, in terms of that is enough. There is a limit for this, and also because that is being, it's a polarized society, and religion is being instrumentalized. But the hope is there, and we need to, and that is the source for us to go forward, further. I don't see another way without hope.
Okay. Yeah, and so you mentioned the younger generation, young people. So the third guest has a question around that.
What are other inspiring things or helpful messages we can give to young people, or some concrete ways to support and include them better?
Yeah, exactly. We have very good examples of the Act Alliance itself. We have in the assembly that we had in 2018, and more recently in Indonesia last year in November, the participation of the youth was extremely important and big. And for me, we need to support youth, giving them platforms to take the real space, giving them the opportunity and equal space for contributing for decision making as the adults and that are involved in that. We need to provide mentorship for those who do not have the opportunity for that, support educational systems that are reinforcing the participation of them, and also the protection for them from burnout and backlash, as we mentioned. Because we have so many, when the youth are doing things that are not in favor of those groups that want to keep the status quo, it's very easy for them to say, oh, this band of, sometimes they even mention about marginals or things like that. In some situation, even ideologizing that, as we see in some of the governments as well, saying they are communists, and that is very difficult for them to deal with this when there is, even from their own groups that are associating them with this kind of stereotypes that are provided by the people. So it's give opportunity and but be honest as well, because I see that people say, okay, you need to include youth, but nothing is done to ensure that they are part of that. So if you will not be coherent with ourselves as adults, and especially people on leadership positions, then we will not advance.
That's exciting to hear, is that you are very intentional about creating space for the younger generation to speak, but also being part of your board and advisors, if I'm not mistaken, right? So that's really encouraging. Rudelmar, your question for the next guest.
Well, I think that is associated to what I just mentioned. How to break down political polarization and bring people to the middle stage, or the middle range, in order to avoid hatred or erosion of values such as inclusion, respect, solidarity, and justice. How the next person can provide some indications how to bring people to the middle range to avoid this polarization, because today there are groups that are completely speaking and they are not changing positions, but there is a big number of people that are in between these groups, and they tend to go to one of the polars. So that's the as a strategy how to break down this political polarization.
I would like to go back to the comment that you made around a lot of faith leaders that they're not speaking out about what's happening, that you would like to hear them more. Why do you think that's happening? Why is it relatively silent?
There are two major things. One is the fear that they have to split their communities and congregation even more, because the political polarization that is generated using religion, by the way, make that the people do not agree, and they are taking hard decisions and say, so we are leaving the church and you are creating another one. That I have seen in several situations, that people do not avoid address issues that are sensitive and polarizing somehow. The second one, and that's the most worrying one, is the use of religion and as a sacred space to justify wrongdoings. And that is in Latin America is a very good example, and we have a lot of work on this. Is the confluence of fundamentalisms? When the church or the religion, the political sphere, and the economic powers come together to benefit each other. Approve bills in the Congress, where, for instance, in Brazil, there is a big group of parliamentarians that they call themselves, in Portuguese is the group of the boi, that's cow, because they are the ones that are dealing with cattle and also the agribusiness. So they want to explore more, to get more money. So they use religion and those that are the group of the Bible, the B, another B in Portuguese, to justify somehow, to make sacred the actions, so the people can accept easily. So that is one of the reasons. It has been distorted, changed completely the understanding in terms of how faith works in this confluence of fundamentalism. So that is what we are seeing. And also, I will not say that it's the lack of consistent with the values. I think that in the Christian sector, we talk about the prophetic voice, the prophetic action. That is political as well. It's a political voice, and that I don't see very strongly. And also, a third one that is not so necessary for all is the attacks against these people, these leaders that are speaking out, especially women, female faith leaders. They are the most attacked one, and there is no protection instrument for them within these congregations. So that is another reason. It's even for safety.
Thank you. Although to become a member, part of ACT Alliance, you were explaining, somehow you need to be related with the World Council of Churches or with the Lutherans. What I've seen, observed, is ACT Alliance is also very active in the interfaith sphere. Now, if you have to compare the work that you're doing more, with in the interfaith sphere, so that means with people from other faiths, as well as with compare it with the more ecumenical world. Which one is one easier than the other, or is it similar?
I would say that it is similar in terms of the complexities that religions brings to any of the areas, because the Christian faith is there are so different traditions, so different interpretations even within the same traditions about Bibles and sacred texts. For instance, on gender, for instance, we have members that are extremely progressive in terms of understanding the women autonomy body, for instance, and others that are completely against talking about rights, issues related to family or children, issues related to it, and the most critical one, it's about the sexual orientation. So that brings much more complications. And sometimes we find in other faiths that are not Christians much more openness for these kind of things that in the ecumenical movement you do not see the space necessary to advance. So it's depends very much on the topic, and depend very much on the region, because most of the religions also are adapting to the social and cultural norms. They are sometimes informing the social and cultural norms, and sometimes absorbing the social norms into the religious sphere. So it's very complex, and but I do not make any difference between working in the ecumenical or in the interfaith sphere.
Okay. Rudelmar, you mentioned a while ago the Sustainable Development Goals. That is a kind of a framework where, a lot of people within the world agree upon. It's not perfect, but, there was a discussion going on where many people or many different countries were involved, and ultimately 17 Sustainable Development Goals were developed. So my question to my guest is always, what do you want the listeners to know about the Sustainable Development Goals?
Well, I think that the Sustainable Development Goals was a very important political framework and an instrument for advancing humanity and also Sustainable Development Goals or actions. And we have we noted that we have advanced until the pandemic with the COVID-19, when everything went back a little bit because of the economic impact on this. But now also because of the polarization, the people ignore this, because they believe that that's part of one of the groups that are defending this kind of issue, especially on climate, on gender, and other points as well. But there is also the agenda of the future, that was how we will do after the Sustainable Development Goals. And to be very frank with you, I do not believe that the world, especially because of the crisis in multilateralism, and also the positioning of some autocratic governments, more right-wing governments taking over and making a big, strong narrative that this is not an agenda that they can support, that we will go further, unless we will have a revolution in the way how we will address these global issues. And that passed by solving issues related to multilateralism that needs to be changed, and it will not be the same as before. We know that. But the big question is how and who will be the moral complex for that. Who will give the line now? Because of course we changed the world with the creation of the United Nations after the Second World War. Mm-hmm. Some people are saying that we are already facing a third war, a war that is different. Mm-hmm. So, but what is the next step? And the Sustainable Development Goals still are the ones that we need to keep, and not to to allow them to regress the agenda of the SDGs.
No, yeah, thank you. So, I mean, you mentioned when I was listening to you, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that was the framework. So you talked about the past tense. So you see that although we have set that goal as a world, it's under, revision, or it might change. But we, until we have something different, we need to hold on to it. But you also mentioned that despite the fact that we have made progress on those 17 goals due to, for instance, the pandemic, we had setbacks. A growing group of people in the world is also saying that we were not on the right track because we didn't pay proper attention to the knowledge, abilities, and skills that you require as an individual as well as a community, to make those required process and system changes. And they came up with the inner development goals. And there are 5 goals: being, thinking, relating, collaborating, and acting. So my question to you about those inner development goals is, 1, have you heard about them? 2 is, what does that, what do you think about these inner development goals? And especially being the general secretary of a faith-based network.
Yeah, I have not heard that as a framework as the SDGs are, because for me, what you mentioned are more than goals. It's methodology and strategies to move forward. I think that of course, we have until 2030 to see how much we will be able to advance that. But if you see on the issues of climate, in terms of gender, we are seeing setbacks in these issues. I was part of a high level commission of UNFPA, and we have tracked how governments are implementing that. And instead, after the pandemic of going green in terms of achieving, it has been yellow, and some situation even red. So that is the point. We need to insist on that. But the 6 elements that you have mentioned, I think that is something important for us to incorporate not only in the SDGs but also in the strategies that we are talking about, the new multilateral system, how that will be, how we will associate that with the values that we have to promote inclusive humanity. And also this crisis that we are facing now, I think that is an opportunity for us to see also from a decolonized lens who has built this. And you mentioned that they have not considered some elements and also the knowledge, especially in the communities. And that's because we are still working with the legacy of colonization, how it was in many centuries ago. And that we need to change. And that is going to change because the geopolitical situation is changing as well. And we need to, I don't believe that we will be the global norm anymore, dictating how humanity should behave itself. And that brings, of course, positive and negative dimension for that. But that's talk for another podcast.
Yeah. No, thanks, Rudelmar. So, the inner development goals also identify 23 skills, in order to work on being, thinking, relating, collaborating, and acting, those 5 goals. And the skills are mentioned like empathy and critical thinking. So, you need to, I think within faith-based organizations, the realization that you have to work on yourself and community comes naturally in many ways because we want to bring our whole self to the work that we do, right? So I would like to know a little bit more about, Rudelmar. And so I have always a question packaged in a music question. So if I ask you to come up with, to mention a piece of music or a song that best represents, for a big part, of who you are, who Rudelmar is, which song or piece of music would that be, and why?
You know, I'm a very bad person for recalling name of musics. I know sometimes the lyrics, some part of that, and the music I know. But of course, there are some that we cannot forget ever. One that is still relevant today, it's from John Lennon, Imagine. You know, that has a lot of things that are associated with the discrimination that we are facing, the polarization that we are facing in the world today, the lack of solidarity. You know, it's this music is inspiring somehow. Maybe a second one is the What a Wonderful World from Louis Armstrong. That for me is something that make me think about that as well. And then I have some Brazilians one that have very nice fun, but I don't recall names. That brings element related to changing stereotypes, especially in the gender, because we had in Brazil music from a singer that Martinho da Vila, and he was thinking one in terms of women, how women see him or treated them. And then a group of women make a different version using the same lyrics, but using the same music that was exactly the opposite, creating in terms of inclusion and autonomy of the women and so on. So that is another music that I don't recall the name.
Okay.
Mulheres, it's women actually the name. In Portuguese, mulheres.
Mulheres. Okay. Great. So I will add those 3 songs if they are available on Spotify, because we made to remind the listeners, we made a Spotify playlist called #WalkTalkListen, and all the songs that have been selected by my guest, you can listen to that, and that's from hard rock to sambas to to blues and to pop. So no, thanks for that, Rudelmar. If there is do you have any message, invitation, or question you would like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, yes, of course. I think that my call is for us, independently who we are, where we are located, what kind of work we do. Let's stand up, come together, strategize together, and defend a humanity that is inclusive, that respects human rights and human dignity, and that put the planet at the center as well, together with the people at the center. That is my call. I think that we need to come together with a global movement, actually, to be able to stop the political trends that you are facing today.
Okay, and thanks for mentioning the planet. What we are seeing also today is this trend, is that actually we as humans are taken to court by nature. Is that something that ACT Alliance is looking into as well? And what do you see? What could be implications for that?
Yeah, ACT Alliance, we have a global program actually that is called Climate Justice. And that is one of our big concerns, despite of today, because of the aid cuts and what is going on in the world, nobody is talking anymore about climate. It seems that was a solved problem. That is not. And, we have difficulties as human beings to identify that you are dying little by little because of the destruction that are happening. And they are happening with more intensity, and that is an urgent agenda that we are not realizing, because the narrative globally, using the media, social media, or the conventional media, they are focusing on other issues, and they are minimizing the impact of climate change. So ACT Alliance is very much involved from mitigation, adaptation, but also focusing especially in terms of the loss and damage, making those responsible for the situation that we are today to pay for this situation. But it's not being very easy, to be very frank with you, Maurice. I do not know what needs to help additionally. The people forgot what happened in California with the fires. People forgot what happened in Brazil with the floods, or Europe with the floods, or everywhere. It's the only if they will have very strong events again for the people seeing, oh, why that is happening. And unfortunately are saying people, some groups, including religious leaders, saying, well, that is God giving what we deserved. So, which is wrong, of course.
Yeah. And thanks for lifting that up and reminding us. We indeed, it seems that our memories are not really good, right? And it's important that that you are reminding us and that you lift this up. So I would like to thank you for that. Rudelmar, these conversations always go fast, so I would like to thank you for your willingness to talk with me today, despite your jet lag. Is there any question that I did not ask today that I should have asked you?
No, I think that we have been very comprehensive, but of course, because of the timing, we have not been able to go more in details, because for the audience, probably some of the concepts or comments that I have made, it's not clear. And I think that this confluence of fundamentalism is one of them. I think that we need to understand more how that is being expressed in our different contexts. But there are some studies, ACT Alliance, we have engaging, especially in Latin America countries, very strongly on these issues. And it's amazing the impact that it has on human rights, on human dignity in all the countries, when this religionization of politics and politicization of religions come together. So that is one of the areas that we need to take into account when dealing with issues of polarization, political polarization, and also issues of values in society today.
Okay, and we'll make sure that the listeners can find the website where a lot of those documents can be found, the ACT Alliance website, also they can follow you on the different social media platforms as well, and the same is true for ACT Alliance as an organization. So thanks a lot.
It's very easy, Maurice, because I have a very unique name, Rudelmar. That's the name that I have from all my social medias anyway.
Okay. So noted, and so please follow Rudelmar. Yeah, thank you so much, and for what you do, for who you are, Rudelmar, and until we meet and talk next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, Maurice, and for the great program that you have.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.